Welcome to Shine on Oklahoma Music, and I am so excited today because we have my very favorite Oklahoma's own Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Wanda Jackson.
Hi, Brian.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, happy to be.
Even more, thank you for being you. And we're getting ready to treat these viewers for a whole delightful tour of your incredible life. You started at age 14 touring with Hank Thompson, at least on occasion. So that makes this your 70th year.
That's a bunch, Brian.
Now, you were before that even on the radio here in Oklahoma City with KLPR.
That's where I started, yeah, with my guitar and my foot hitting the base of the mic and making it go boom, boom, boom. They had to tell me to stop patting my foot.
Now, how old were you when you started that radio show approximately?
I don't know. I won a contest. I was probably about 14 at the same time that Hank called me and invited me to come sing. So that would be about right, 13, 14.
Now, what I love is to talk about what our stars are still doing. A lot of them are thought of in terms of legacy, but you're still very relevant, and you're doing stuff to this day, including that you just had a new album come out at the tail end of last year,
Right.
Encore. Tell us a little about that.
Well, that was such a special album, still is to me. It will be, as far as I know, my last one and last hurrah. But I got to work with my granddaughter, who is now also my manager, and Jordan Simpson. And she's the one that really made this happen. A lot of people were involved. John Hensley, a publicist of mine, got the ball rolling. And then Wendell helped get songs and things. But Jordan is the one that said, we can't let this, when my husband passed, she said, we can't just let this project lay. We've got to finish it, get in there. And so she said, I want you to write. And I said, Jordan, I haven't written in 20 years. She said, but you still can. So she's been back there pushing me, and my daughter has done the same thing. And if Wendell were here, he would be doing it. So it was really, that just makes it special. It was the whole family and all the support I had. And sure enough, I wrote quite a few of the songs.
You did, and they're terrific. And it charted, which makes you the longest reigning charting artist in music history, surpassing Billie Holiday.
Really?
And so that is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I think being at the top of the music food chain
Like
is
to
pretty
touch
good.
me?
I would, pretty much. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That
Thank
is
you.
quite an endorsement from the fans of all these generations to still put something on the charts.
I know it, yeah. And you know, I still get fan mail almost every day. So, and my records are still out there, so it makes me feel good that as I watch the CMT Awards and the CMAs and all of those, I think it's wonderful that I had a little part of getting all this started with this many people. And now, I think especially for the women, they tell me that I encourage them, you know, that if she can do it, I can do it. So that makes you feel good at the end of your days to know that you've helped people.
And that's not just some new amateur aspiring artists who have told you that. We would start off with some names like Adele.
Yeah.
What did Adele tell you?
Well, she said if she hadn't heard my song, Funnel of Love, that she never would have written Rolling in the Deep, her biggest song. Now, I don't understand that. I don't hear any lightness, but it inspired her one way or another. So.
And you toured with her.
Right, I got to do open for her for 10 days, and I got to know her a little bit. Those situations, the stars are so well guarded, but she would defy them. You know, a lot of times they'd come don't step out of your dressing room, Adele's coming. And if I stood in the doorway, she'd just stop, come over, hug me, and talk. So that made me feel good. She was down to earth, and I liked her.
What I think is a standout about you is that you bridge truly this 70-year career we just talked about. You've known all the musically relevant stars pretty much in between. And so let's go back to the beginning. So you're generally referred to as part of the class of 55, even though you predate that. But the famous class of 55 came from Sun Records.
Right.
But the standout about you is not only were you the only lady in the bunch, but you weren't on Sun Records. But you ran with the Sun Bunch.
Well, yeah. As it turned out, it was fate, I guess, but it was luck. My first tour after I graduated from Capitol Hill High School, well, how it came about, I'm not sure. I know what I remember. My dad was trying to book me, and he didn't know how. You know, Daddy was a barber, so, but he was trying to help, and he got a hold of Bob Neal, and Bob said, I really need a girl singer to put on these shows with this young man I'm booking. Said he's taken off like wildfire, and a girl on the show would be good. He said his name is Elvis Presley. Well, we'd never heard of him in Oklahoma. He was getting popular in Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Texas, but he hadn't gotten to Oklahoma yet. So I got to tour with him, and he's the one that helped me see the need for me to not change directions, but include some new music, what's happening now. So I credit him with that.
And that would be the two of you's first national tour, right?
Well, I don't know about him.
I think so. And then you are briefly the bigger star of the two.
Yeah, about that long.
But you had had more charted hits at that time when you were going out that first maiden voyage with him.
Right, I did.
And some might argue that while you were out there together, you not only had great stage chemistry, but you two invented rock and roll. So you're the credited.
I'm the cause of all this.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, no.
You are generally credited with being the first female in the world to have had a rock and roll hit. And it was at his encouragement, I understand.
Yeah, it was. Not the song, but just, I said, well, I remember saying, Elvis, I love to watch you on stage, and I listen to your records now, but I can't do that kind of music. There weren't any girls doing it, you know. So he said, yes, you can. I know you can. So there and again, he was pushing me. Push the envelope. You can do more than you think you can. And he took me to his home and played guitar and showed me kind of how you take a country song, change the beat, and make it more of a rock and roll. So that's what he was doing at the time. You know, That's All Right, Mama, and the kind of country songs.
And so the song was I Gotta Know, the first one, I think, to chart for rock and roll. So how did you come about that song? Do you remember?
I Gotta Know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, a lady that lived in Oklahoma City and was a songwriter, and I didn't know her until she called me and said, I've written a song for you, and I'd like to do it for you. Are you interested? And I said, well, yeah. She said, it's kind of different. So I said, okay, I'm anxious to hear it. She came over, and it started off with one line of a little country ditty, and then it revs up and gets rock and roll and then falls back to the country. So it was definitely different, and I was just, that song has done a lot for me. Everybody remembers it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it broke the door. And it's funny that it's an Oklahoma connection there again.
Right. us Okies, boy.
I know. So you've on this Elvis tour. Before we go off to talk about some other Okies, you got to meet some interesting people along the way, and I love hearing those stories. And I don't think they're frequently talked about, but maybe you'll share with us today. You met a little boy in Lubbock, Texas, named Buddy Holly. On that,
He wasn't a little boy.
Well, he's pretty
Young man.
Yeah, young man. And
Like the rest of us.
tell us about your first impression with Buddy Holly.
I liked him personally fine. He worked several shows with us. But I had this mad crush on Elvis. So as far as I was concerned, he was just trying to copy Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Johnny Cash was trying to copy Elvis, though.
Yeah.
So, but Elvis knew the difference. And he said, "Oh no," so they're going to be big. He told me Johnny will be the biggest name in country music. So he hit that right.
He got pretty close, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Pretty wise young man.
And so you were out there on the stage, side stage, watching both a young Johnny Cash and a young Buddy Holly at different times. And Elvis was pretty appreciative of their work and pointing them out.
Yeah, very much. And I understand from other artists that he helped a lot of people that way. He encouraged them and was never jealous, and I think I might be naive in this, but I kind of think he was amazed at his success and all this girls screaming and all. He got used to it, I'm sure, right quick, because he had a lot of fun on stage. And I always say you can learn something from every artist, so new artists need to watch the seasoned ones and just pick up little things that you can do or not do. And Elvis, I learned to have fun, and because he just was always happy if he was on stage.
And you conveyed that, I think, all the way up until you decided to retire a couple of years, even before this latest album came out, from the stage performances. But you were carrying on.
Oh, yeah. I continued to work, tour, rather. And I didn't carry my own band, but I had a band that was available to me all the time. And so I had a good show worked up. It was always the same musicians.
So among those early tour days, we can rattle off the names. So Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, Johnny Cash. That's kind of some of the, and Buddy, and all of them may be considered, along with you, founders of rock and roll.
Right.
And you got to be friends with most of them. I mean, it went beyond just those early days. You had a long-lasting friendship with over the decades with, of course, Buddy died early.
Yeah, they had long careers too,
Well, let's talk about some of the Okies. So I think what's really also, you knew all these people that just span the spectrum, but you also have known virtually every Oklahoma music star, from Spade Cooley all the way up to Blake Shelton and Kristen Chenoweth, and you toured with or worked some with Bob Wills. So you've just had this huge spectrum that you were so young, of course. That's a huge advantage when you broke into the scene. But let's talk about some of them because this is for the Oklahoma History Archives. This will be a preserved record about each of them forever. No pressure.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But how about Bob Wills?
Well, I loved Bob, but his band could not play rock and roll. He and his band backed me in Las Vegas at the Showboat, where they expected me to do the rock and roll stuff. And we all tried the best we could, but it just really wasn't very good. And I think Bob knew it and I knew it, but there wasn't anything we could do about it. So I got to ride with him in a limousine to the show one night, he and his wife. That's about all the close contact I had with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew his brothers too, Johnny. I worked with his band.
And then you got to work with a young lady also from Capitol Hill quite often that turned out to be a great friend of yours, and pretty Miss Norma Jean.
Yeah, and she went on to make a name for herself and make her place in country music. Yeah, she left Oklahoma City after she graduated and went to Nashville because Porter Wagner had asked her to come and be on his new TV show. It was, I think it was syndicated or just shown nationally, but it was a big thing for her. So that made her career, and I was glad that that happened for her. But I've always stayed in Oklahoma City.
But you two stayed very close friends all these years.
Yeah, I was trying to call her yesterday.
And then you worked with also, like you told me, you knew most of the guys over the years, but they would typically only put one lady on the bill. And so it wasn't until maybe later in your career that might surprise most viewers that you met some of the other lady music stars. Aside from Norma Jean, you two started off kind of together, but like Jody Miller, you maybe didn't get to know until I think the 90s or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know her. Well, I did the Ozark Jubilee, and I met a few that way. But you're right, we did, our tours were called, package shows, and that meant a package of artists. So there was always at least 4, and your big shows might have more. But with a show like that, you don't, you're on such a strict time that you have to kind of be doing this all the time, get off before they get the hook and drag you off.
Yeah.
And I was always the only girl. I think it was that way for all of us.
Yeah.
They'd have 4 men and 1 girl for window dressing, I think.
Well, it turned out pretty good for you because you wound up charting 50, I think, or so, maybe even 51 different songs on different charts, which include overseas. You had a phenomenal career overseas, particularly in Germany. And I got to tell you a story. I was in the Trolley Stop Record Shop this weekend, and there was a guy from Germany there, and he had driven all across the country on a couple of occasions just to see you in concert. He was just completely ecstatic that he was in Wanda Jackson's hometown. And talked about having virtually all of your records. And so I mentioned...
They do. They come with stacked under their chin. Will
wanting
you
an
sign
autograph.
these?
Well, you're so gracious about signing. I'm among those wearing you out about that. But you've been recognized by being put into the German Country Music Hall of Fame.
Right. That was quite a surprise, actually, for me. I recorded with their top country artist, a man, and Tom Astor. And so that's what helped me to gain country fans in Germany. And of course, in 1965, I had a #1 song in Germany and in the German language. So, and that's the hardest I've ever had to work behind a microphone, but I wound up doing 18 songs in the German language. So that has given my career and my name longevity in Germany.
And while I've seen footage of some of those German shows that are on YouTube in different places, and they'll certainly sing along when you're singing your German language songs, but when you would go, you would also perform your English songs, and they sang every word of those too, just almost on key even. They were just so tuned in to your lyrics.
Well, it's amazing to me that the love that the Europeans have for music. I mean, everything from, Beethoven to Wanda Jackson, I guess, because they love it all.
And while you've charted 50 some odd songs, your big, big #1 was in Japan.
Yeah, and Germany, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's Fujiyama Mama.
Right.
And so how did you come about getting that song to record?
Well, it was a cover song for me. Um, I was in a drugstore with two of my girlfriends, and we were, you know, listening to the jukebox and talking. And I remember saying, "Girls, hush, hush." And I started listening. I said, "That song." And we started looking through the jukebox to find it, and we did. We played it again and again. And gosh, I've got to record that. And so, and I had a session coming up, so I went up to the record store, and they had it, surprisingly. Anastine was the girl that had it first, but hers was a lot calmer than mine. You never know where your songs are going to come from. You know, it can be wadded up in someone's pocket and opened up, would you like this? So you have to be careful, not just send people away, say, I'm not interested. So I've found quite a few.
And of course, you're a noted songwriter. You've had so much success. Other artists have recorded some of your songs as well. What is the first song you remember writing?
It was called You'd Be the First One to Know. I was in the 9th grade, and I think I was in a history or one of those boring classes, and I was writing that song.
It was clearly part of your daily studies.
Yeah, I wanted to write. That was just country. I wrote some country things. But I wrote mostly out of desperation because here I am in a field alone. No one's writing songs, especially for girls, and in this new field of music. So my daddy encouraged me. He said, "You've written these other things, write one." So I gave it a try, and I've done pretty well with my writing.
Yeah. All the way up to this last album you wrote again. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So in all of them that you've written, you got I know, a special affinity for Right or Wrong. That was a huge signature song for you of sorts in the country field. And while people talk about your rock and roll status because you were the first, I often think it's overlooked because I think by most accounts it's generally agreed that you're only the 5th female to chart on the country Billboard charts. So again, still pretty early on as a pioneer.
Yeah.
So whenever you're out there writing songs, I mean, you were talking to me before about there just weren't songs written for a female perspective, and you took that on.
Yeah, I wrote, my first one like that was Mean, Mean Man. Was my first one. Yeah, you know, it's still on my set list today. That and I've Got to Know were two that I still do. Because I'm retired now, aren't I? I forget. But my set lists, I have a file of them, you know, through the years. And some of those country songs have been on the set list forever. People just always want to hear them.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, you're in the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame for quite some time ago. You've been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since 2009, and I believe you got to perform Mean, Mean Man at that performance for your induction, right?
I did.
Nobody else was writing songs in rockabilly for girls, so I started writing them myself.
And so that has to be a pretty surreal moment for you to know you wrote it, you were the first, and then that's the epic, isn't it?
Yeah, it has been for me. I've had a lot of wonderful awards and citations and given to me, and I'm appreciative of all of them, of course. But that one, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of the granddaddy of them all. They're all important, but...
And your dad gave you a guitar from like a pawn shop, right, that you helped start writing these songs on?
Yeah.
And that just became your guitar for quite some time. That was your mainstay instrument, right?
Right. And with that guitar, of course, now it's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But my dad and I, he took me with him, and we went to the pawn shop so I could get maybe a better guitar, but not brand new. It's too expensive. And so we found this Martin D18, and I decided I wanted my name on it. And I was doing the Hank Thompson TV shows when he was in town. I took it out there and had the art department, I said, I want my name down here. And so they fixed it up, and that's kind of become famous in its own right, is that guitar.
Yeah, I mean, it's been even featured in the Met in New York City, the Museum of Art that is like the pinnacle. I mean, there's the Mona Lisa, and then there's Wanda Jackson's guitar. That's pretty tall cotton there.
Yeah, you bet.
So it was one of the.
Funny.
I know, but it was something for us to be proud of here in Oklahoma. I mean, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was asked by the Met to send just a few select instruments, and then the Rolling Stone magazine profiled that of all those, they thought your guitar being there among them was the most special among them. So it was like Jimi Hendrix's guitar and yours, and it was really special. So you were inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame by Miranda Lambert right after she rolled off of her record-setting 5th Female Vocalist of the Year award. Mm-hmm. And she dropped everything to come fly in here. She wasn't already going to be here just to induct you.
Yeah, and Blake came with her.
Yeah, that's
at that
right.
time. Yeah, I couldn't believe that. Here she is, the number one. But yeah, she made me feel very good when she did that.
She says, and this is also available on YouTube, but when she's there, she's so nervous. And I've had the pleasure to be around you while meeting several different stars, and I always marvel at how in awe of you they tend to be. And they've certainly seen their fair share, if not more, of stars. Yeah. And you seem to always give people a little bit of an edge, you know, where they're just so excited to meet you.
Well, thank you. I don't see that, you know, but
well, you're gracious, and but you've told me about somebody that you felt that way about. I think will shock most people. So who was the star that you were really excited to meet? Ricky Skaggs.
Is it? Yeah. I want to find out. Yeah, we went to see Merle Haggard, actually, on a show here in the city. And Ricky Skaggs was on it and several others. I think they were on a Marlboro tour, every summer Marlboro. I did one of them too. So that's where we were. We went out where they parked the buses inside and to find Merle, because we know Merle, and he wasn't on his bus. So we were leaving, and Ricky Skaggs stepped out of his bus, and Wendell, that's my husband, said, "Honey, there's Ricky. I know you want to meet him." I felt so silly, Brian, because I said, no, I don't want to. He said, "What do you mean? That's all you play is Ricky Skaggs." So he took me over. He said, I told him, "I'm Wendell Goodman. This is my wife, Wanda Jackson." And I was getting ready to say, "Nice to meet you." He said, "Wanda," and he gave me a big hug and lifted me off the ground. So that kind of broke the ice. I couldn't believe it, though.
Well, I think it's fun to know who, inspires other artists,
Right.
and I
Yeah,
think that's
it
an
is.
interesting correlation. Well, we've talked about your dad and how important he was. It got you an instrument and got you booked with Bob Neal, but your mom played a pretty important role in your career, too, so let's talk about your mom some.
Okay, thank you. I like to talk about Mother because she was the one that stayed home with the baggage. She was the one that was off stage and all, but so very important to me. She always worked outside the house, but I'm an only child, so I guess spoiled pretty much. I always got what I wanted, so I guess I was spoiled. But she made my clothes for me ever since I was a little girl, and she was a great seamstress. So when I got to performing on stage. I started off in the little full skirts and boots and hat, with the strap under here and that big guitar. I think I must have looked like a caricature of myself. And I went to her, I said, Mother, I just feel awful in these old clothes. I was probably 14. But I started wearing heels. And once I did that, then I began to become a woman. I wanted to dress glamorous when I was on stage and all that. And so I told her that I wanted to wear straight skirts and something that would kind of move. So she came up with the fringe, the soft fringe, silk. And she used that, and we'd design them. She'd make them. And, yeah, my uniforms are more popular than the guitar. And I'm in there somewhere, but they are really, really the stars.
Because fringe became your trademark. That
Yeah.
was really a look for you that you carried throughout the rest of your career.
Right.
But it was recognized by CMT, where they declared you the first sex symbol of country music.
Yeah.
And it was all designed by an Oklahoma woman named Nellie Jackson.
That's right, yeah.
It was pretty interesting. Not a designer in New York or something like that. It was your mom here. And it wasn't a major music promoter who landed you on a national tour with Elvis. It was your dad.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really inspirational part of your story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that because I think so too. Everyone says, well, you had understanding parents, didn't you? I said, more than that. They just went all out, whatever I needed for this career, because they knew I was serious. And my daddy had played music and was in a band when he was younger, and sang. So he's the one that taught me to play guitar and put music in my life. So I've always thought, because they dropped everything when I started to tour, Mother and Daddy said, we can't send a 17-year-old girl out on the road by herself, there's no way. So they decided Daddy would quit his job and drive me and see if I could make enough money to help with the household expenses, because I was living at home. So that made it easy for me. I was at home. Daddy did my books. Mother did my laundry. I had it made. Everyone says, why don't you move out on your own? I said, heck, leave all this?
Yeah.
No.
And family's always been important to you. And so you did, there's two things you did in addition to inventing rock and roll and other little things like that, that no one in this business really you ever hear about doing. But there are a couple of Oklahoma ladies who have done it, but you were probably the first. You went out at what could arguably be the pinnacle of your career, and you decided you were going to do gospel. No one walks away from a major record. You were with Capitol Records. You were label mates with the Beatles and the Beach Boys and several other monster stars. It was a huge, huge record label when you were on it. And you said, I'm going to go dedicate my career now for gospel performances.
Right.
Tell us about that. I think that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is when I look back on it. But that's what God does to you. Other people look at you and scratch their heads for the decisions you make, but that's between God and the person. And I'd been a church member all my life, but it really hadn't ever been important to me. So my husband and I were in town one Sunday, and our kids wanted us to meet them at church. Mother kept them in church, made sure that they went to church, because we were always gone on Sundays. But we went to church that Sunday, and it was that day the Lord just spoke to my heart, and I knew I wanted to give my heart and life to Jesus Christ. And I told my husband, I just said, excuse me, something I got to do. He said, wait, me too. So I've been forever grateful to the Lord for calling both of us at the same time. And we stayed in our business for a good while, a few months actually. And then God showed us that we could trust Him, and He would use my testimony. My popularity could be used for His glory. So that's what we felt He was saying to us. And as you said, everybody else is clamoring to get on Capitol. And my producer, Ken Nelson, he said, you know, I know, Wanda, where your heart is. Your heart's in the gospel music. I think that you should find you a label that specializes in that and can help you, because Capitol isn't in the gospel business. And so he helped me get off. I had 2 more years on my contract.
Okay, so you were both called at the same time, and you went and dedicated this whole career in gospel. You produced a bunch of gospel. You even had gospel hits. You came up with a signature one. Yeah. Tell us about your signature gospel hit.
Well, I had put a yodel song back in my country set list, and people really enjoyed it. They just really liked it. So Wendell said, honey, why don't you write a gospel song that has a yodel in it, but just make it about Jesus? And I thought he'd lost his mind. I thought, you know, he's over the edge. I said, I don't think that's possible. He said, well, I think it is. So in a roundabout way, a song got back to me that had the lyrics, but not a yodel. But the woman left the space for him. She told me how she'd written it. And so I wrote the yodel, but I was having trouble. And the Lord showed me, this is hard for people to imagine, I guess, that, but I said, in my mind, I said, Lord, how can I get into a yodel using your name? And it just came to me. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus set me free. Like that. And so that did it. And then I finished the yodel and recorded the song, and it became a signature.
I know, and so you had a career in gospel music that you were recognized for.
Right.
Well, you did this with Wendell, and Wendell was, of course, a good friend, and I was privileged to know him too. Yeah. He was so dedicated to your career, and he would be probably the most jubilant of your recent successes that, you know, he worked as a visionary for even a long time ago. He knew where he thought you ought to be in music history. But the other amazing thing I think that you did that is just pretty much unheard of was that you said, we will stay right here in Oklahoma. And so you chose to operate your career mostly, almost entirely, between your parents and in Wendell. You stayed right here as Oklahoma as a home base.
Yeah. Well, we had 2 children pretty fast. We had them close together. And it was more important to us that our children be brought up around their grandparents and cousins and family than for us to take them to Nashville where nobody knew us. So that's what we decided to do, and I'm glad that we have. They've got to have school buddies and things like that here in the city.
And I know you're proud of both of them. That's Greg and Gina.
Yeah.
But I'm supposed to ask you which one's your favorite.
Oh, you are. Whichever one I'm talking to.
That's right. And they each had 2 kids.
Right.
So you've got 4 grandkids, and now you have
2 great-grandkids.
a boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. Perfect.
How about that? It's all balanced. Oklahoma also named you, as far as the government goes, an Oklahoma treasure, which you were only the 13th person in state history to be given that distinction. They've only done one more since you, so 14 now in total.
That amazes me. I mean, that's very humbling, really.
Well, it's because of your commitment to your state and all the things that you've done here, but that gives you a special distinction, which is rare for most Oklahomans. It means that you can be enshrined in a portrait to be placed inside the state capitol building. And some friends of yours recently gathered to do just that.
Yes, they did. They gave me a beautiful reception, and I got to meet a lot of the legislatures and a couple of ex-governors, and it was a wonderful affair. They're raising money that way, I guess, for this portrait to happen. And I'm so very flattered. They said it would hang next to Will Rogers, and that really got me.
Yeah, I think they've picked out a spot right close to the governor's office, and they mentioned very specifically, because that tends to be where tourists and certainly the school kids, when they're there touring the Capitol with their classmates, the most popular singular spot in the Capitol, and they wanted you to be there. So what an honor.
Right, for sure. And I think the photo that I picked out to use, I hope this is the one, shows me in the fringe, one of the original fringe dresses, and that famous guitar.
How it all comes back around.
Right.
Well, you know, what I think's interesting is that you still are musically relevant. You charted last year, but then it's also just not forgotten about. You are now, though, being also inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame this month.
Yeah. Super. Super duper. I don't know what to say. I'm flattered, humbled to be with, women that do such great things, for our state and our cities. It's just very much of an honor.
Well, I was blown away by your nominators. There was a pretty group of high-class folks that got together and decided to try to make this happen. You had the opera star Leona Mitchell from Enid.
Yeah.
And then Reba McEntire.
Right.
And then, of course, Kristen Chenoweth, who's just said what an inspiration you were to her career.
Right.
Including about your wardrobe. And she specifically talks about that in her nomination letter, which I was impressed with, that she followed your career so closely, and it said it had been an influence on her.
Yeah,
But
was
that's
shocked.
quite a class of folks cheering you on there.
Opera singers now,
Yeah.
no less.
Well, so let's run through a few more. We've talked about some of the big stars you've worked with, but also you recorded one of Becky Hobbs' songs. Mm-hmm. You appreciated her as a songwriter.
Yeah, she's good songwriter.
And then you've become friends with Jody Miller over the years.
Right. I didn't know her when she was popular. Really popular. Her name, everyone knows her name now. But she stayed in Oklahoma also. But she was always busy, out on tour, and I was too. So it's just recently I got to get acquainted with her.
And
Sweet lady.
And very much so. And then you've also you've met Vince Gill a couple of times. Mm-hmm. You got to do Elvis tribute with him once, right?
Yes, in Nashville.
And B.J. Thomas.
Right, he was there at that. I was irritated at Vince when I first met him, because his mother was there, and I said something about, I live in Oklahoma City. And he said, "You do? I had no idea." I said, "Vince, how dare you not know that?" No, I didn't do that. But I was kind of set back. I thought, how did he not know that?
Yeah, right here close by.
Yeah.
And then Joe Diffie, he actually was the one who nominated you for the Oklahoma Hall of Fame.
Right, he did. Yeah, and I got to meet him. I didn't get real well acquainted, but I did meet him and be with him a little bit around that occasion.
And then some might be surprised, but this goes on with, like I said, you stayed in touch with modern artists that have been hits later, like Taylor Hanson of Hanson. Mm-hmm. And most recently, you got to meet a dynamic young lady named Darcy Lynn.
Yeah, I've followed her since America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Isn't that it? Yeah, she's great.
Well, she was enamored that she got the chance to meet you recently. Oh. She's talked about that. I was listening to a radio show of her Sunday night, and she was doing a shout out about you and meeting you recently, and she's got a show coming up, and
Yeah.
was in hopes that you'd stop by. So, you know, among one last award I want to shout out, because you were also given the National Endowment of the Arts Award recognition, and that is really, really difficult to get. So you've been recognized by the state of Oklahoma's government, but that is the Congress and the President of the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I was hoping I'd get to meet him, but he didn't stop by.
So what about that? That was actually some years ago now, and so, you know, this is not like something that people have done. You've just been steadily honored.
I know, yeah, it started about then. 'Cause that kind of started all of the Hall of Fames and things.
So what's it like now to recognize, as you look in retrospect, to this?
Trying to find out where am I going to put this award. No, what does it mean to me? It just means I feel like I've been successful, and that's a good feeling to look back over your life. And I've had a 56-year marriage, 2 wonderful, beautiful kids, all this family around me, and my state to recognize me. People in Austria and Switzerland and France come up and they've told me, "Where is Maud, Oklahoma? I'm coming to America. I want to go." And a lot of them say, "I was in America. I went to Maud, and I went to the drugstore where your things are." So if they like country music or rock and roll, they know where Oklahoma is. I said, "Well, we're easy to find on the map because Texas is in our backyard."
That's right. Well, you helped put us on the map, and I thank you for doing that and for all that you've done for helping Oklahoma and being an ambassador. And as you look through all of this is a little bit of a different question, but how would you like to be remembered?
I guess one of my songs from the album says that I've been treated like a lady. I've always been a lady, even though being in the entertainment business, people kind of expect you to be tough or be one of the guys. But my dad didn't let me do that in the beginning of my career, and so I've upheld that, and that my Christian values have made a difference in people's lives, I think, would be the number one thing.
Well, you've made a difference in my life and in so many others. And I appreciate you being here with us on our Shine on Oklahoma Music Stars. Thank you. It's been a delight, and thanks for sharing your story one more time.
Thank you, Brian. See why I love this guy? I do.
Thank you for joining us.